Hello, this is Peter Falk, and you're listening to the Columbo Files on the Ludic Lounge, hosted by Antonicus Maximus and John Soares. Well, hello, ladies, gentlemen, and all good folk in between. Welcome to the Columbo Files, brought to you by the Ludic Lounge. I am your co-host, as always and forever, John Soares. Thank you for joining us, ladies, gentlemen, and gentle folk. With me, as always, is the man, the myth, the legend, the booty himself, Antonicus Gluteus Maximus the Fourth. Bid a good fine morn to the people, Anthony.
I bid you all a good fine morn to you people.
Were you being a Dutchman?
No, John, I was trying to work on my snooty aristocrat voice, such as one Mr. Dale Kingston in this episode, played by the very, very suave Ross Martin.
Yes, indeed. We have a great episode this week for you folks. It is the 1974 classic, the fourth episode of season 1, Suitable for Framing, starring Peter Falk as always, and guest starring this week as our murderer, as Anthony so eloquently put, Mr. Ross Martin as Dale Kingston, art critic. Anthony, do you know some stuff about Mr. Ross Martin?
I do know some stuff, John, and I would love to disclose it with you. So, Mr. Ross Martin was working in Hollywood starting in the year 1949, John.
Ooh. I imagine he did some stage stuff, right?
Oh, yeah, did a lot of stage stuff. But as always, as I like to do here on the Columbo Files, I like to hit the notable works that I would recognize him, and if I can recognize him, I would imagine the general pop culture would recognize him from. So, notable works include parts on Gunsmoke, Bat Masterson, Peter Gunn, Mr. Lucky, and that's a name I want you to remember, John, because I'm going to bring that up here in a little bit.
Okay.
Twilight Zone. He starred in 2 episodes. Bonanza, Wagon Train, The Wild Wild West. He played a major role in, and this is, again, the TV show, Wild Wild West, not the Will Smith vehicle of the 90s.
That is based off of that show. And per my notes, Mr. Martin played lead character Artemis Gordon, who was a Secret Service agent. He's the Kevin Kline of the original TV show.
Yes, that's a great way of putting it for maybe some of our younger listeners.
Now, got him an Emmy.
He did get an Emmy off of that.
Or an Emmy nod.
Yes.
For it. Did you know that in 1968, he broke his leg and suffered a near-fatal heart attack while on the Wild Wild West and had to be replaced for 9 episodes?
Yes, and that was the heart attack. That's why I wanted to mention Mr. Lucky, because Mr. Lucky was the last time he played a good, like, almost lead character, because after that and after his heart attack, he, in that year 1968, he essentially was blackballed from all the major Hollywood studios as far as leading roles. So because of that, from that point on, he just did a lot of character acting or co-acting, but never really carried a vehicle by himself.
Guest roles and stuff like that.
Exactly. But John, one thing I wanted to mention about Mr. Ross Martin was he was in C-Lab 2020, the 1970s, I believe, cartoon, which Adult Swim took over, in around the early 2000s, late 90s, and when they did their quote-unquote revamp.
Of C-Lab 2021, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just taking those old episodes and hacking them up into something new.
Exactly.
Just re-recording stuff over it. A fun little tidbit that I learned while researching Ross Martin. Apparently, the Wild Wild West was canceled in 1969 due to a national controversy over violence in television.
That's not nice.
That isn't nice at all. But, it goes in line with kind of how, this country tends to, the U.S. in particular, tends to blow up violence when it comes to how it's portrayed in certain media, at least.
Well, John, you have to also understand the year 1969. This is 1 year removed from Martin Luther King being assassinated, Robert Kennedy being assassinated, the Democratic National Convention, and all of the violence that erupted out of that. So the world, at least when I say the world, the U.S. at the time, the U.S. population was a little bit more on the cautious side when it came towards violence.
It was a show, to say the least. So,
John.
On that note, I think we can move on.
But John, we didn't even talk about how Ross Martin was on Wonder Woman, Hawaii Five-0, The Love Boat, Fantasy Island, and Mork and Mindy, which is one of his last roles before he unfortunately collapsed and passed away from his heart complications that he suffered earlier in 1968. He passed out and passed away in 1981, where he collapsed, died while playing tennis.
Wow, that's unfortunate. I also have a note that he worked with director Blake Edwards, who did SOB and Victor Victoria, and was also notably married to Mary Poppins herself, Julie Andrews, for the longest time. I think over 50 years or something like that. But Blake Edwards is a legend in Hollywood, and Ross Martin was a frequent collaborator, apparently, of his. But I think in the early days of Blake Edwards' career,
yes,
not in the big film stuff later on. Do you have anything to add about Mr. Ross Martin, Anthony?
No, John, I think I already mentioned all the notables for Mr. Ross Martin.
Now, we move on to the victims this week, though it's a little bit more complicated, as we'll get into when we talk about the episode proper, because our first victim has no speaking lines. It is only in this episode for about a minute.
And a minute's being very generous, John.
Yes, yes. The actor who plays our victim, Rudy Matthews, is an actor by the name of Robert Shane. And there is still things that we could talk about Mr. Shane, because he is a notable B-movie actor. So he was in a lot of cheap sci-fi and horror movies. He worked in Hollywood for 60 years, Anthony.
Wow.
And if you look at his IMDb, it seemed like he was just uncredited a lot. But he was just working a lot. His biggest claim to fame, though, is a part as Inspector Bill Henderson in the 1952 to 1958 show The Adventures of Superman, starring George Reeve.
Oh,
exactly. And that is the first, I believe, TV broadcast show of Superman. I mean, they had the movie serials way back when.
Yes.
Yeah, not just the Fleischer cartoons, but there was an actual live-action Superman serial.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's not very good. None of those serials are, compared to what we have now. The Batman ones are interesting just because they are, Batman works more in a straight up mystery story than like Shazam or Superman necessarily do. But and that's
carrying the gun at that point in those serials. I can't quite remember.
No, at that point he was not. But they were like really cheap costumes and old chunky men. He did an uncredited role in Hitchcock's North by Northwest. That was the other really big thing that I was able to see in his resume. His final role, funny enough, was a character named Reggie in 2 episodes of the 1990-1991 Flash TV show with John Wesley Shipp as the Flash.
And Mark Hamill as the Trickster.
Yes, that is correct. Both of whom reprised their roles when the Flash came back to life on the CW as a completely different show with young, pretty people. Keep in mind Adventures of Superman for later, Anthony, because there is a tie-in to that later on in our discussions.
What a tease.
Yes. The second person that we can talk about that is somewhat victimized in this episode for various reasons, and we hope that you watch the episode so you'll get the idea of what I'm getting at, but trying to keep it relatively spoiler-free until we get to full spoiler talk later on. Rosanna Huffman playing young art student Tracy O'Connor. This is one of 2 episodes that Miss Huffman did. She does a later episode in season 9, and there's a particular reason she's in this episode, not besides her obvious talent. She was married to Richard Levinson, one of our co-creators.
No way!
Yeah, and this also let me learn that Richard Levinson created Murder, She Wrote.
That makes so much sense, John.
So much sense, right?
Sense. There's so many overlapping actors between these 2 shows.
Because they were made by the same freaking person. So they were married his entire life up until his death, and she acted she was a various TV actor, did a lot of guest star roles. She had parts in Mission Impossible, The Streets of San Francisco, Hill Street Blues, Moonlighting, Golden Girls, Cagney and Lacey. She had additional voices in the animated feature Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest. She was in episodes of Murder, She Wrote. She did a voice part in the movie Babe, which is directed by Mad Max director George Miller.
Oh, God. How does that work out?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. She was also in ER.
But John, she
Yes,
was
Anthony.
also in Family Ties, The Distinguished Gentleman, which was the Eddie Murphy early 90s vehicle. You already mentioned Murder, She Wrote, with her 7 episodes spanning from 1984 to 1994. She was also in the late 90s, early 2000s family sitcom hit, Seventh Heaven.
Seventh Heaven with pedophile father.
Yeah, pretty much. And you already mentioned moonlighting, John, but for those of the younger audience that don't know what moonlighting was, this was Bruce Willis's first ever famous role in Hollywood, essentially.
What were his and Sybil Shepherd's characters' names? Sam and Diane? No, Sam and Diane is Cheers.
It's Cheers, yeah. Honestly, John, I haven't even watched one episode of Moonlighting, so I couldn't tell you.
Me neither, but the only reason we're giving it so much time is that it was well known for that will they, won't they romance.
Yep.
And that kind of tanked the show when they decided they will with those characters. And notably, Sybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis did not get along at a certain point, right. And that became a lot of tabloid fodder. Or fodder or fodder? It's fodder.
Fodder.
Yes. Fodder. Hello, fodder. Hello, fodder.
It's a good thing we're professionals, John.
I know. The absolute professionals that we are. Why don't we get into our supporting cast this week, Anthony?
Absolutely. I would like to talk about one Miss Kim Hunter playing the role of Aunt Edna Matthews, John.
Yes, we will get into Edna Matthews herself later on, but Kim Hunter is notable because in 1951, she starred opposite Marlon Brando in the film adaptation A Streetcar Named Desire.
Hey, Stella!
Can you do that again without blowing out my ears?
I'll try. Hey, Stella! Is that better?
That is better.
Okay.
She played Stella on Broadway. She was the original Stella in 1947. She won the Oscar and the Golden Globe for this part, Best Supporting Actress.
Yes, she did, John.
No, please, Anthony, by all means.
She also starred in such TV roles as Climax, Rawhide, Bonanza, and of course, the Chuck Heston vehicle, Planet of the Apes, and those sequels, and she played Zira.
Zira, you showed up in 3 of the Planet of the Apes movies.
You know, John, I don't really care. I love your Chuck Heston impression.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to be here as Charlton Heston. I was in movies like Planet of the Apes.
Chuck Heston, everyone. Chuck Heston.
Thank you. Should I just read the rest of her parts as Chuck Heston?
No, you really shouldn't.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Sure.
I'm sure.
But I want to stay. Anyway, back to business. She also had parts in the TV show Mannix, Mission Impossible, The Rockford Files, Murder, She Wrote again.
Of course.
More modern sitcoms like Mad About You.
Mad About You.
Don't know how the song goes.
That's about it.
Yeah. She also had some parts on LA Law. She was also, Anthony, on the Blacklist.
Really?
Yeah, she was on the Blacklist.
Wait, are we talking James Spader vehicle, or are we talking the...
Oh, no, we're talking about HUAC.
Oh, okay, got it.
That Blacklist.
McCarthyism. Good old McCarthyism.
McCarthyism, it's not the way to go, but it seems that we're going that way. She was a lifelong liberal Democrat, and that, I guess, led her to be put on the blacklist. I wasn't able really to find more accurate confirmation as to what exactly led to her being put on the blacklist.
Yeah, but it really wasn't hard to get on the blacklist back in the day, John.
It's like if you said anything that was in some way mild criticism, that was probably enough to get you listed on the blacklist. But it did not seem to inhibit her too much. She was still working even while she was on the blacklist. Her career got more steam around 1956 when HUAC's influence started to decline. Andy, do you have anything you'd like to add about Miss Kim Hunter?
No, John, I think I already, minus my Hey Stella blowing out the listeners' ears, that's about all I have on one Miss Kim Hunter.
All right, who's next on the docket?
I have Don Ameche as Frank Simpson, John.
Don Ameche. Don Ameche. That's a stereotypical Italian voice.
And it also sounds like the third baseman of the Yankees of yore for some reason.
Don Ameche or that voice I just did?
Yes, all of it.
All of it.
Now, John, Don Ameche worked in Hollywood from 1935 to 1994. Huge character actor. Some of his notable works was Climax, Quincy M.E., Fantasy
It was
Island.
murder.
Trading Places. He played Mortimer Duke in the Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd movie, Trading Places, John.
Yeah, that was one of his big roles, which he then cameoed as in one of our favorite movies, Coming to America.
Absolutely. I was tickled pink when I read that, John, when I was doing my show research.
Yeah, for those of you at home that have not seen Trading Places, and you should, Don Ameche played one of two rich brothers who were intent on ruining an innocent man's life for a simple bet of $1.
Of $1. He also played in Cocoon and the sequel of Cocoon, Cocoon, The Return.
We'll never get older. We'll never die.
Diabetes. That's my limited fake. That's
for Wilford Brimley, who's not even in this episode.
That's my limited fake Wilford Brimley.
I also have here, did you mention he was on Fantasy Island?
Fantasy Island.
Yes. Fantasy Island. Welcome to Fantasy Island. I am Ricardo Montalban.
Oh, he's going to be coming
Ricardo.
up. Yeah, that really was. But he'll be coming up in shortly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be a couple of years, season-wise for him. But
fair.
Yeah, that's neither here nor there.
It's okay. Just tease it to the audience, John. That's all I was trying to do.
Ricardo Montalban. He sells rich Corinthian leather. Yeah, some more background about Don Ameche. He was a comedian and a vaudeville performer as well. So he was like,
that makes total sense. He has a total vaudeville look to him.
It's the cadence of his voice. I feel like when he showed up, it's like, oh, he sounds like old Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly.
And old Hollywood comes a lot from the vaudeville performers. Those early live comedy performances.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think he had a face only radio would love. At least in terms of the poor Wikipedia photo that they gave the guy, it did not do him any favors. But it also doesn't do him any favors that his early career started in radio. But that's most people. Funny enough, I do have an anecdote about Don Ameche, Anthony.
I would love to hear it.
As a result of his film, his radio and vaudeville performances, he got a contract with 20th Century Fox for films. He was in so many films. In particular, biopics. So he was known for doing biography pictures, so much so that somebody joked that at a certain point, Don Ameche would end up playing Don Ameche in a movie, which he then did.
Yeah, of course.
But more importantly, in 1939, he starred as the title character in the movie The Story of Alexander Graham Bell. So he played Alexander Graham Bell, the creator of the telephone, and it led to the worst of the use, Ameche, as slang for a telephone and common catchphrases, noted by a gentleman named Mike Klein, who wrote in the Iowa City Gazette. The film led people of the generation to call people on the phone with the phrase, "You're wanted on the Ameche."
Oh.
Yeah. And it even made its way into a joke by Groucho Marx, where in the film Go West, he says, "Telephone, this is 1870. Don Ameche hasn't invented the telephone yet." That's very much a Groucho Marx joke.
Of course it is. Now, John, what I'd also like to mention from one Mr. Don Ameche is that he also starred in Harry and the Hendersons as Dr. Wallace Wrightwood, and he voiced Shadow, the golden retriever dog, in the movie Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey.
Oh, babe. I have another story about Don Ameche.
I would love to hear it.
This comes from one of his Trading Places co-stars, Jamie Lee Curtis. And she went on to describe Ameche, who was a proper old school actor. When he would come on set, he would apologize to everybody in advance when he was called to start cursing in a film.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I just thought that was very endearing. And another fun fact, he also starred in a lot of vehicles with Bob Hope. Everybody, Bob Hope.
Of course, vaudeville roots, sure.
I just use that as an excuse to do my limited Bob Hope. I'm just a cheap date.
Playing the hits.
Playing the hits. That's what I do. Play the hits. I didn't know Cocoon was directed by Ron Howard, by the way.
Yeah, I know, right?
I did not know that. I thought it was just an older, like it was before Ron Howard started directing. I guess that just shows what I know.
That's all right, John. But speaking of transitions.
Transition.
I would like to talk about one character by the name of Sam Franklin, who's played by Vic Tayback, John. Now, Vic Tayback is an artist in this episode of Columbo.
A
Now,
dirty looking one.
yes, which is
He looks
funny
gross.
Yes, because every other show he's co-starred in or played a part in, John, through his history is essentially a cop. Like, it doesn't matter the show. He plays some sort of cop, including roles in Streets of San Francisco, Emergency, Mannix, Partridge Family, T.J. Hooker, of course. But, John, he played Mr. Pete Ross in the movie Bullet, which is the main reason I put him here on this list, because that movie is excellent.
That is an excellent movie. For those of you at home, please check out the Steve McQueen starring classic Bullet. It is a great movie. A movie that I am still forever surprised Anthony did not see until I told him about it.
And that was about only a couple years ago I actually watched that movie.
Within 5, to be honest.
Within
5. Because like I came across it during my time in law school, and I was just like, okay, this is a great movie. I love it.
We could do a whole episode, not of Columbo Files, of course, but just a whole episode talking about the movie Bullet by itself.
We might need to do that for Loungecast.
Yeah, why not?
One of these days. Are you ready to get to the crew this week, Anthony? Or do you have anything else you'd like to add about Mr. Vic?
I don't have anything else to add about Vic, but I have 2 more actors I just want to mention.
Yes, please, by all means.
For the role as the curator, or the art salesperson, however you want to view her, Matilda is the character's name in her. Her name was Joan Shawley.
This is the character that is working with the painter Sam Franklin a lot, right? Okay.
Yes, exactly. Now, Joan played various roles, including, various roles by herself in the Abbott and Costello show. She also starred in roles in Mavericks, Zorro, John, the TV series Zorro.
By Disney?
Yeah.
The black and white one?
Yeah, back in there.
I would always try to stay up to watch those, but they always played at like 2 a.m.
Of course, because that's the only time that they could actually put cheap television on. Now, John, she played Sweet Sue in Some Like It Hot, which was one of the Marilyn Monroe vehicles in one of the films she did back in the 50s.
That's late Monroe, too, because that's
Monroe. Yeah.
That's who's in that? I'm trying to think who's starring opposite Marilyn in that. Because it's the where the 2 dudes dress up like women, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Isn't it Jack Gleason or Jack Lemmon?
It is Jack Lemmon. It is the year 1959. The stars of that is Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon.
Tony Curtis. I'm sorry. Whenever I think of Tony Curtis, I just think of Spartacus, and this Brooklyn ass dude in a toga just like, I love you, Spartacus. I'm Tony Curtis. I love you, Spartacus.
It's the best. It's the best, man.
The best.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, folks. I just had to do it.
Just like scratched and unearthed a memory in my brain, John. Hey, yo, Spartacus, love you. Let's play some racquetball.
Hey, Spartacus, are you going down to the Coliseum tonight? I hear there's gonna be a lot of good-looking women down there. They love you, Spartacus, just like I love you, Spartacus.
Hey, let me tell you, I am Spartacus.
No, I'm Spartacus.
Our limited fate Tony Curtis, everyone.
Oh, it's not going to entertain anybody but ourselves.
But just us
okay
two.
with it.
Absolutely. Oh, God. Outside of those vehicles, John, she starred in the Dick Van Dyke Show as Pickles Sorrell, which was a neighbor of Dick Van Dyke.
Okay.
And that's all I have on Joan. But I'd like to move on just as an honorable mention. He's literally only in the last scene of this episode of Columbo. But that's Barney Phillips playing the role of Captain Weiler, John.
Yeah, I know that. I noticed that they had the captain. I don't remember them ever saying the name of the captain.
Yeah, it was Weiler. It was like briefly just name dropped.
Yeah, I was just trying to see if you had caught it.
Yeah,
I did.
Kind of tossed out there.
Okay.
Now, he was a big-time character actor in Hollywood from 1937 all the way to 1985. Now, some of his bigger roles included Sergeant Ed Jacobs in the TV show Dragnet, the first rendition of it. He played in an episode of I Love Lucy, I Was a Teenage Werewolf, Peter Gunn, Johnny Midnight, which I had no idea what Johnny Midnight is, John. But let me tell you, A, it's one of the better names out there. And
agreed.
B, the plot of Johnny Midnight, which is Barney Phillips plays Lieutenant Sam Geller. The plot of it and this is from IMDb. Johnny Midnight, Edmund O'Brien is the actor who plays him, is an ex-actor, theater owner, now turned private eye. His turf is Broadway in New York City's theater district.
He's a Broadway PI. So what does he do? Investigates.
Yeah, so he essentially something happens and he gets kicked out of the show of Broadway of like various shows and decides to become a PI.
Okay.
And he just solves murders or not murders. He's a private eye. He gets hired and his turf is anywhere between Broadway and New York City's theater district, and that's his area. That's his beat, and he solves
stage crimes
or whatever have you.
The Broadway bandit. That's who he chases after.
Pretty much. No, I was thinking more so the Phantom of the Opera.
That just involves a lot more dramatic kissing.
Absolutely. Now, John, that's all I have on this person. So let me tell you that this episode was written by Jackson Gillis. Thank you. And was directed by Hy Averback.
Yes. Mr. Averback did 2 episodes of Columbo, so we'll come back to him at some point. He was best known for a couple things. In particular, The Real McCoys, which was a sitcom about a West Virginian grandpa who takes his family across the country to live on a farm in California, and wackiness ensues. From 1957 to 1960, Averback directed 102 episodes of The Real McCoys, Anthony.
Wow.
102. That's, 102 half-hour shows.
That's The Real McCoy.
Indeed it is. His other claim to fame was MASH.
Oh, wow.
He did 20 episodes of MASH. I don't think he directed the big finale that everybody saw and will never be beat again in ratings, which honestly I think is the only thing that anyone knows MASH for these days, at least in our generation. Because I've never seen a single episode of MASH.
Yeah, neither. I have probably years ago, but nothing that I can remember.
I know it's on like TV all the time, and you always, it's either you catch it in the beginning and change the channel, or catch it at the end and then you change the channel.
Yeah,
that was my experience. He also did 3 episodes of Burke's Law, which is relevant because it stars our first villain, Gene Barry.
Well, I'll be.
I know. It all just comes together. He also directed Murder, She Wrote, an episode of Murder, She Wrote. So now that we know that Levinson is behind it, it's just like, oh, well, of course.
Yeah.
Just asking for friends to help out. Interesting enough, Anthony, did you know that he started his career in radio?
I did not, John.
Yeah, he worked with Jack Parr, who I believe was the predecessor to Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show.
He was.
Jack Benny, who was a noted comedian.
Wow.
And last but not least, I don't think you know who this person is, Anthony, but he also worked in radio with Bob Hope, everybody, Bob Hope.
You actually surprised me with that one. I'm proud of you for that.
You just let me set them up, and I set them out of the park. That's what I do.
Now, speaking of setting things out of the park, John, the score by Billy Goldenberg is with us once again for this episode and does an excellent job throughout the entire show.
Yeah, it's really good to have Goldenberg back. He does some good things. I don't think that the directing kind of matches some of the things his score does, but we can get into that as it comes up. I'd like to talk about our writer, Mr. Jackson Gillis.
Absolutely.
This is one of 13 episodes of Columbo that he does.
Wow.
Yeah. And funny enough, Anthony, he's from our area.
Really?
Yes. He wasn't born in Central California, but his family lived in Fresno, California. He attended the CSU Fresno, which was my alma mater, and he graduated from Stanford.
Wow.
Yeah. And more importantly, this is our Adventures of Superman connection, Anthony. He wrote 15 episodes of The Adventures of Superman starring George Reeve.
Huh.
Yeah. He also wrote for Zorro.
Wow.
For Lassie.
Okay.
Did 11 episodes of Lassie. He wrote 31 episodes of Perry Mason.
Dang, that's a lot of Perry Mason.
That is a lot of Perry Mason. He wrote for the Man from U.N.C.L.E., I Spy, The Wild Wild West, The Mod Squad, Bonanza, Hawaii Five-0, Mission Impossible, Wonder Woman starring Linda Carter, Knight Rider, Murder, She Wrote Again, and he ended his career, funny enough, writing an episode for Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman.
Oh, wow. That's such a great story, ending it on Superman, where he began it with Superman.
I know. Too bad it's, the Superman show everyone kind of forgets about, but...
and everyone doesn't quite like, yes. But still.
In part to Dean Cain ruining everybody's goodwill
Yeah,
But
That's
I just thought it was fascinating that a guy from our neck of the woods made it that far.
Well, good on him.
And now 2 Central Valley boys are talking about another one.
Yeah, fair. I would like to talk about. Yeah, I know.
I know.
I would like to give just a little brief episode description to those loyal listeners listening at home or in their car or at work or anywhere they're listening, which we want to sit here and say thank you for all of you loyal listeners. We appreciate you, and we appreciate you subscribing, rating, and reviewing. Now, John, the episode description here is: an art critic's dreams of wealth are shattered when he hears the details of his uncle's will in this gripping episode.
Indeed, it is gripping. Anthony, do you think it's time to get into it?
I think it is time to get our grips, starting with Act 1.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, John, Act 1 opens with Ross Martin in a very sharp tuxedo, mind you.
It is a very 70s crushed velvet dinner jacket.
Yes.
I don't know if I hate it or if I love it.
I love the hell out of it.
I'm in between. So we open with Dale Kingston. We have no idea. Yeah, we're not given any names. He just walks in on a man playing piano.
An elderly man playing piano.
Yes.
It appears that they both know each other because the elderly man looks at him, smiles, and continues playing his piano.
And then he gets shot.
Yeah.
That's it. That is our inciting murder, folks.
Good night, folks.
We're done. We know who did it. A minute in. Anthony, I'm curious as to where you stood on this, because the directing this week was a little bit rough for me. I mean, it wasn't as much shoe leather as it was last week.
Yes.
It's definitely better, but there were some choices that I was very much not the biggest fan of. In particular was the dramatic art close-ups after the shooting of Rudy Matthews, with Goldenberg's score kind of accenting those close-ups. It was just like, I had it in my notes, just art, shock. Huh.
Yeah, there were some choices made for sure, John. Like you mentioned, the aforementioned super zoom in, extreme close-up shot of one of the portraits there, as Ross Martin here is tearing up the place, throwing stuff down. Yeah, just making it look like a burglary, essentially.
Pretty aggressively. I mean, as much as a man with a heart condition probably could.
Yeah.
I appreciate how low the scene was set, the camera at least, because it was watching up at him. I felt, at least in my mind's eye, that while you were watching him just toss stuff left and right. Almost cursed again. What I do appreciate, though, in this entire scene is that Goldenberg's music really puts a sense of eerie underneath it all.
It really hits, John. It really, as he's tearing up the place, as he's running to the side door, jimmying the lock to make it look like a burglar even further. The score is just making you feel eerie, filling you with suspicion, going, well, what's going on? These two obviously know each other. Who is this character? Who did he shoot? What the heck is happening here?
Yeah, we're given a lot. We're not given much at this point. We get a lot later. So at this point, we just know that the shooter knew the old man at the piano enough that he could just walk into the house. Also of note, the shooter, Ross Martin, puts a heated blanket on top of the body of his victim to simulate a fake time of death.
To give himself more so of an alibi, which will come into play in literally just a little while. But, John, speaking of entering the scene and entering the house, now what I appreciate about the score here is we're seeing somebody walk up to the house and ring the doorbell. We see a nice, beautiful young lady do so. And the way the music's playing, and again, as eerie as it is, makes you think like, oh, he's going to get caught in the act by this one person. And the music kind of plays into that a little bit, I felt, John. Did you kind of feel a similar?
I mean, at first, and then I felt like it changed a little bit based off his reaction, because he seemed like, oh, this is exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, exactly. Like once he heard the doorbell, at first it was kind of like a shock, and the orchestral play there play a little bit of some shocking tones. And then it's like, oh, yeah, that's right. This person's in on this murder.
Exactly.
This girl, who we later find out his character's name is Tracy, she walks in the house, and they start communicating with one another as Ross Martin is giving her final instructions that she obviously already knew.
And may I add that she has the most 70s haircut you will ever see in your life.
That is totally fair.
Did we talk about Mr. Kingston going after the art?
No, that's one of the things as he's tearing up the room before Tracy gets in. He's also going after a couple pieces of art in particular.
In particular, a pair of pastel, oil pastel paintings of two women dancing or something like that. Also, do we find out who this woman, what her name is, or do we do? I thought not, because we don't get any name for her until much later.
Yeah,
yeah, and he never even Kingston never says it.
No, not at all. So the only thing we know is that this girl shows up and obviously is with him and going over this plan of everything, and that showing that this murder was going to be premeditated or was premeditated. In some way, but what the real goal of her being there is so that he could set up his alibi. Yes.
So she stays behind and he leaves, and they are on a very strict schedule on what needs to happen. She needs to fire off a gun at a certain point and go out a certain way in order to establish, this is a robbery. Before we move on to the party that Mr. Kingston finds himself at, I just wanted to note that I really appreciate Goldenberg's score.
Yes.
When Tracy, the young woman that is helping our murderer, is just looking around the art room that she's in and just appreciating the art. The score kind of underlined the scene for me, the intentions and what she was thinking, what Ross Martin's character was trying to get at by doing all of this, and what she was trying to get out of that by helping him. It just really kind of amplified itself to me. Now, Anthony, we go to a art party with a lot of snooty white people who are paying $5,000 for a painting of a cactus to put in their bathroom.
Yeah, so Matilda in this episode, John, is played by Joan Shawley, as I previously mentioned her. Now, Matilda is like a curator, or she's just an art seller?
My understanding is that she's the owner and operator of an art gallery. And the purpose of this party is the grand unveiling of the work of Sam Franklin.
Who is one heck of an artist, John.
I mean... Sure. He could certainly paint better than I could.
Doesn't he just look the part, John?
He looks like a drunk uncle.
Yeah, exactly.
To be quite honest, and he is definitely fitting the part right in this scene by being the utter epitome of a burnt-out hippie.
Yeah, that's a pretty accurate description of what he looks like. Now, we are introduced to his character as well as Matilda via a customer, if you will, who's looking at this portrait of a cactus that was painted by said artist. And now, one of the things I found interesting in the dialogue, John, was that she liked the color pink that was in it, but it doesn't match the pink of her wallpaper.
So it sounds like this lady that a very drunk Sam Franklin is trying to explain that he can't really create custom work like that, because it sounds like that lady is just like, can you change the pink just a little bit so it can match my wallpaper?
God, what a concept. Wallpaper, John. Jeez.
I don't even know who has wallpaper anymore.
That's what I'm saying.
It's weird. But Ross Martin's character shows up, and he's given a very much big to-do about who he is, because we find out through exposition by Cactus Lady.
Dale? You're Dale?
Dale Kingston? The famous art critic?
Yeah, that was hilarious.
That wasn't really good exposition, I must say. It was a little heavy-handed.
It was forced, for sure.
Yeah. So I do appreciate, though, that Dale Kingston does feel a little bit of an art snob. He's an art critic.
That slimy critic who's just crapping all over, said statues and paintings, and of course, laughing at his own jokes, John.
Yeah, in the most awkward of laughter, because we alternate between this party and the murder scene where our young woman accomplice is waiting to follow the plan.
And speaking of plan, John, this is where Dale himself keeps checking his watch. He asks for the times numerous times, one of them to the artist, Mr. Franklin.
And it's about 5 minutes till 11, and 11 o'clock is looking to be the time that Kingston is trying to simulate as the time of death. And if I do say, I appreciate his subtle digs about the art, because he just calls Franklin's work, arid little landscapes. And I think somebody as drunk as Sam Franklin is, and later on probably not as clever as he probably thinks he is, that would probably go over his head.
Oh, yeah, big time.
And my God, you mentioned him laughing at his own jokes. All of those joke laughing scenes are painful.
So awkward.
So awkward.
Because nobody's laughing with him until he starts uproariously laughing.
Yeah, it's like his jokes are just so not good and so inside baseball about the art that it's only funny to him.
Yeah. Now, John, earlier you mentioned that the scene is jumping from this party back into Tracy, who's at the scene of the crime. And back at the scene of the crime, security ends up showing up and then leaving the premises until Tracy uses the gun and fires a shot out the window or something of the like.
Yes.
Or close enough to where the security officer in the car could hear, to which security officer runs rapidly back.
So what happened, if I recall, is that, that patio door gets, he opens it from the inside and then simulates somebody trying to pick the lock from the outside. Tracy is supposed to then shoot out of that and then leave through that door to simulate, this is where the burglars came from. And then her VW Bug is parked over by that side and she leaves there. And that leaves us at the end of Act 1, Anthony. And I think we can go into the investigation found in Act 2. So, Act 2, Anthony. We are with the lieutenant investigating the scene. He is wandering the foyer of Mr. Rudy Matthews' mansion while the police are combing the scene. And there's an interview with one of the housekeepers, the husband of the wife. They're both housekeepers from what I understand, right?
Yeah, they're both, I think they're just referred to as the help or something of that nature.
Yeah, I think they're not necessarily live-in servants. And today, coincidentally, Anthony, was their day off.
Of course.
So they weren't there. But they are good at their job because, the servant, or the gentleman, while Columbo is walking around about to light his cigar, chastises Columbo. It's like, no smoking. Mr. Matthews is very particular about smoking.
And Columbo just gives him this deadpan look where it's like, yeah, dude, he's dead, though. Which I appreciate about the scene.
Columbo in this episode a lot is just like, so what?
Yeah.
About exactly. some of the responses he's getting. We get a time of death of 11 p.m., give or take a few minutes, according to the coroner. At which point, Mr. Dale Kingston arrives. We're assuming this is sometime, 2 a.m. or so, something like that.
Sometime like middle of the party or the end of the party he was attending.
Yes. He is the only living relative of Rudy Matthews, and is presumed to be the guy who's going to be in charge of the art collection and whatever business Mr. Matthews has with that art.
Yeah. Now, John, when Columbo starts talking to Dale, do you feel like he's starting to trying to get his bona fides, like trying to make sure he actually knows about art? Because Columbo takes him on this kind of a tour of some of these art pieces in the household.
A little bit. I mean, I think that it's a mix of Columbo trying to figure out, well, why leave... If all of these paintings are valuable in some regard, why leave some? Why go for some more than the others? And it is also just trying to figure out who is Dale Kingston. How is, right. What is he considered in regard to the art in Mr. Matthews' world? I also appreciated the first piece he talks to Kingston about is particularly about two-faced people.
Love
which
that.
Was a nice little subtle dig. And also a little bit, I think, of I was going to say foreshadowing, but I don't think it's foreshadowing. That talk about the signatures. It's like, I don't think that really means anything in the context of anything later in the episode, don't you? But
no,
like
I think it was
it seemed like it.
Yeah, I think Columbo just tried to use that as some sort of dialogue just to further get assessment of what the personality of Dale is, which is him coming off as a pompous jerk.
Yeah, a pompous jerk who knows his stuff, but a pompous jerk nonetheless. As we usually do with the Columbo Files, Anthony, when do you start thinking Columbo suspects the suspect?
I don't think he starts suspecting Dale as of yet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. I think he starts to later on in this particular scene, though, because Columbo has his first clue of, why would the thief steal a way less expensive painting and then come for the most valuable ones and all of a sudden get smart, and then Dale starts to come up with some extravagant lie.
That's my problem. I can't understand it. It's my problem. I got these problems. So, yeah, like you said, Anthony, Columbo's trying to figure out why some of these paintings were taken over others. The approach doesn't make sense to him. Why go for one less famous over one more famous? We also learned that the art had recently returned from a traveling exhibit and had just been reframed. So the paintings that were taken in particular were worth over $500,000, which in 1971 money compared to now is probably way too many simoleons.
Probably so.
Yeah.
Probably so.
And another thing that Columbo notes is that why start to take the paintings out of the frames, have an encounter with Mr. Matthews, shoot him, and then go back to taking the paintings. At a certain point, when you shoot somebody, a normal burglar would probably book it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, why would they go for at that point, the job is tainted. You have to leave. Otherwise, you're just putting yourself at risk.
Now, John, for the sake of wrapping up how much money $500,000 in today's terms are, that is approximately, John, $3,208,000.
Sweet Lord have mercy.
Good old inflation.
Good old inflation. So while he's talking with Mr. Kingston, a female police officer shows up in a very well-to-do uniform. Not a beat cop by any means. She's in high heels and a skirt.
Yeah, which was kind of sexist if we're just putting it out there.
A little bit, but I mean, it's all part of what Columbo's trying to do, which is recreate what the security guard heard.
Yeah, so her being in the high heels serves a purpose. I'd like to think Columbo called ahead and said, hey, bring a pair of high heels and a skirt so we can try to test the theory out.
Yeah. I would hope so as well. I mean, there is my memory is a little hazy, but I know that there is a female officer who shows up later in this series that is a helper to Columbo in I think one or two episodes, and is dressed more, in pants and boots.
The stereotypical police uniform.
Exactly. So we go out to the door, which is presumed to be the exit and entry point for the burglar. And we learn from Columbo, based off of, Kingston asking questions, that a professional would not have gone for the door. They would have gone for a window because they wouldn't have been able to bypass the burglar alarm by picking the lock on the door.
Exactly. And we're finding this out simultaneously while Columbo's having the female police officer run and timing her. And then you hear Columbo, yell at the security guard, "Is that what you heard?" The security guard goes, "Yep, that's the exact sound." So we find out that it's a woman.
Can I just say that I loved Peter Falk's holler?
Yeah, that was a really great holler.
This is like when Peter Falk yells, I just appreciate it. It's just there's so much heart to it. I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
So we know based off of what the security guard heard at this point that one of the thieves was a woman because he heard high heels running away, and there has to have been a second accomplice, somebody who
Dale goes, "What do you mean there ought to be a second one?"
Yeah.
To which Columbo's like, "Yeah, there's too many paintings. They're too heavy."
Yeah, there's too many paintings, and you had somebody on the inside because that's the only way you could bypass. That's another way you could bypass the alarm is if somebody just came in.
Exactly.
Columbo also asks Mr. Martin, "How do you, who would sell this, or how would you sell these paintings?" Usually, it would be a foreign buyer or a ransom to either the gallery, the owner of the painting, the gallery owner, or trying to get the insurance company to pay out. Columbo then also thinks that Kingston would be the guy to talk to for a ransom because of his relationship with his uncle and his status as an art critic. Whoever stole the painting would most likely be getting in contact with Dale because that's the best way to get at Kingston's money or Matthew's money.
And I also think Columbo offered this up because he just wanted to wiretap the phone of Kingston just to see if he's doing anything nefarious.
And this is the point where I think Columbo definitely 100% is believing or suspecting Kingston having something to do with this.
Yep. 100% agree.
So we have a tapped phone, presumably, and we cut to the next scene, which is an interrogation with the gallery owner, Matilda, and our drunk painter, Sam.
Who has a mean hangover. Literally, quite mean. He is a very grouchy person.
Oh, he is the grumpiest of grumpers. It's ridiculous.
And it's a kind of a cute scene because Columbo asks Matilda first what's going on. You know, when was he at the party? He meaning Dale. Mm-hmm. When was Dale at the party? What time? Trying to establish alibi. And then she says, well, I don't quite remember, but I know Sam Franklin, the artist there, would probably know better. So Columbo walks into a room with Sam painting, and Sam's doing a nudist portrait of a nice little young gal there. And Columbo instantly – oh, go ahead, John.
Yeah, no, and I picked this up from Columbo File. We have no idea who that actress is, and the Columbo File is trying to figure out who she is because she was there at the party that Dale Kingston was at, and – you know, we see her in this scene later on where she has, you know, a substantial interaction with Franklin and Columbo, but we have no idea who this young woman is. So if anybody knows, you know, let us know so we can let the Columbo File know. That way we can solve a mystery. Do you want to talk about Columbo's reaction to her?
It was the best. Essentially, this is stereotypical Columbo, and what I love about Columbo, he turns around and sees her instantly, like, about faces and gets super embarrassed.
Like, you could see his face immediately turn red, and it was kind of fantastic.
And he's like, let me just – the whole time he's just trying to get out of the conversation at that point, where Sam Franklin is like, no, interrupt me now. You're already here. Just do it.
Yeah, and he's just super curmudgeonly about it all. Also, that model was very intrigued by Columbo's presence.
Yeah. As Columbo runs out of there after ascertaining the alibi, he runs out of there, and she goes, I hope you come back soon.
And like wistfully looks his direction.
Yeah, as she gets yelled out by Sam Franklin, stop moving.
I know. So Columbo leaves that room and post finishing the conversation with Sam Franklin to talk to the valet of the gallery, who Matilda said had dealt with Mr. Kingston. So the valet says that he was paid $2 to help Mr. Kingston find a cufflink in his car. Specifically the trunk of his car, which makes no real sense.
Yeah, it was totally odd. Again, this was Dale Kingston, that is, trying to establish his alibi, trying to show later on that, nope, there was no body in his car, and he was there exactly at this time, trying to show, that, no, there's no way I could have been involved because of these two factors. Clear me.
Yeah, and notably, everybody here notes their memory is hazy, but it is around 5 minutes till 11 where they dealt with Mr. Kingston at some point,
which Columbo finds it odd because it's very specific,
and we'll discuss that later when in his conversation with Kingston as well. Also of note here, at this point, people are commenting on the fact that Dale is an art critic who is about to inherit a very substantial art collection, which I guess, this is, my unfamiliarity with the art world, but it sounds like it's going to give him some kind of status in his community.
Yeah, some sort of notoriety, some sort of status. Again, there's exclusive pieces, so you can only see him to see the pieces. So I guess that is a status symbol of the art world.
Yeah, and I imagine he'd probably charge a premium in order to, use pieces in exhibitions or, if they want to be accessed or something like that. All the while all of this is happening, Tracy's trying to get a hold of him, similar to Prescription Murder, where our young female accomplice is trying to get in touch with her older paramour, who we learn later has told her, don't call me for a week. This is following his World of Art lecture. And Anthony, I kind of want to see that lecture in full.
It looked like a god-awful Sunday morning, like, ABC special. Or, you know what I mean? When ABC or NBC, whatever, would have those Sunday mornings.
Or PBS.
Or PBS, exactly. They would have those, like, Sunday mornings, 8 a.m. shows where it's, like, of something you don't care too much about, but it's somebody who's just super enthusiastic about a topic.
Now, do you think that they just keep the camera on him that close the whole time?
I'd like to think so for the comedic purpose, because, boy, loyal listeners, when we tell you this camera was, like, right in his face, we literally mean this camera was pretty much touching his nose.
And some of the things he was saying are just, like, unbelievable. Like, you could see talking about Goya. It's like you could see every kind of detail, even the warts. But if you take the W off wart, you get art. Which is ridiculous.
A cheesy, dumb line that was thrown in there at the end of some art jargon he just tosses in this quote-unquote lecture.
It is god-awful, but I want to see more.
Absolutely. This would be a spin-off show.
I know. Dale Kingston's World of Art. We'll just recreate it and put it on YouTube.
There you go.
Now, do you feel like Dale Kingston is someone who's preoccupied with his image, Anthony?
Yeah, I would argue that, John, just because he's very vain about his appearance. He is very vain about his status in society, especially in the art world. So I would make that argument.
It especially helps the argument when, post his World of Art show, the camera just lingers on him, and it's just long enough that it's awkward. He's just like looking away, just like, am I off? Am I off? Am I off? And he even comments to the producer, just like, cut the camera from me when I'm done, please. I look like a jackass.
Yeah.
In so many words.
In so many words. Yeah. He pretty much yells at that, showing his true persona, not being this bubbly, kind person from his on-camera persona. And so from there, John, we see him at the studio, and Columbo just so happens to bump into him there.
While he's on the phone with his accomplice, who is just trying to get in touch with him because A, she's in love with him, and B, he's probably promised her some kind of career advancement.
And C, she's just worried, right? Because she does love him, and etc.
So he is on the phone with her trying to assuage her concerns, and then Columbo walks in, and he goes, I can't deal with you right now. I'm sorry, bye-bye, and hangs up, which Columbo gets mildly upset about, don't you think?
Yeah, he got upset because he essentially tells Kingston, he's like, hey, Dale, that could have been the person trying to ransom you for the paintings. Why didn't you just hang on with him, ask for some information?
To which Kingston says he's just fielding a call from some nobody noodle neck who watches the show and thinks that they have some kind of valid opinion that they want to get him involved on. Like, he even says, it's just like housewives and women who think that they have some kind of iota of talent, which I thought was a slip on Kingston's part. And Columbo notes it. It's like, wait, you were on the phone with a woman.
Exactly.
Did that throw off Kingston, by the way? Because my memory is just like, when Columbo does stuff like that, he's just poking at the whatever balance.
I think it did. I think it put him more so on the defensive, John, because from here and from that particular line that Columbo gave him, Dale starts getting super defensive to the point where he's like, I see what you're doing here. You're not so clever as you think you are. You want to search my place. You want to accuse me. Here's my key to my apartment. Go search my place. Do whatever you need to do.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he doesn't start that way.
No, not at all. He's starting off as charming and just kind of still aloof, but not to the point where he's degrading Columbo at all.
So he's having this conversation with the lieutenant about the crime while Kingston's getting his makeup taken off, which I note, what is it with him in velvet jackets?
Yeah, he is in love with velvet jackets.
And my God, did you see the size of that tie?
Humongous.
Huge. You could land a 747 on that thing.
Absolutely, you could.
So, and it's here that we learn about his ex-aunt, Edna, the woman that Rudy Matthews was married to and then had divorced. It seems like he's trying to point the blame at her for having something to do with taking the...
Sort of. He's nonchalantly pointing the blame, but in a way to where he is not fully directly because, quote unquote, he still loves her and he thinks of her kindly and she's not a person of note or something of that nature.
It's more like a casual setup to what he tries to do later, I think.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And it's here that we learn that, Columbo says that the lock, it had to have been an inside job because the lock on that patio, that sliding door, could not have been picked from the outside. There's no way it could have been picked.
Yeah, it was definitely jimmied from the inside.
The victim only would have let in somebody that he knew. So whoever this burglar was knew the victim.
Yeah. And then from there, that's when he starts getting huffy and puffy with Columbo, to which he says, fine, here, take a key to my apartment, go search, go do what you got to do. I'm tired of you bothering me, essentially.
Yeah, and Columbo also, at this point, starts pointing out, after Kingston gives a reasonable explanation for why he was searching around for a cufflink in the trunk of a car. There's a reasonable explanation for everything, Anthony, just like Columbo says. He points out that everything about Kingston can be easily established. We know what time he was at the party. We know how long he was at the party. We know the contents of his car. But everybody else has a fuzzy recollection. They can't remember everything exactly. But with Kingston, we know everything exact. No issues. And that's sketchy. And Columbo also had brought a little piece of art with him. Anthony, do you know who that art belonged to?
I don't know, John.
He brought a piece of Sam Franklin's art to bring to Mr. Kingston, Anthony. How about that? Yeah.
How about that?
So he asks Franklin, Kingston, what do you think of this? Is this a good piece? And he's like, no, it's garbage. In so many words. And I think this is part of the reason why Columbo brought up signatures, because he doesn't even, we see the signature pretty clearly, and Franklin doesn't, or Kingston doesn't even pay it in any regard. So Columbo's trying to figure out why, if you hated this art piece, why go to his exhibition? To which another reasonable explanation is given, Anthony.
Because he has to make money from his appearances, John.
Yeah, and sometimes he gets paid to review things, so it's just like, I have to go because I get paid.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is bullhinky, but Columbo's just, stringing him along at this point. Especially because he says that he stopped by a couple times to see some art books, and Mr. Kingston wasn't there.
Exactly.
Which this blow up that you've mentioned a couple times has occurred, because that's where he gets really aggressive with Columbo.
He gets really angry, really aggressive with them, and storms off the set, essentially.
After Columbo takes the key to his apartment.
Right. So Columbo takes him up on that offer.
Which is odd to me.
And shoots him in the foot later, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's just shoots Kingston in the foot,
exactly,
right?
Shoots Kingston in the foot, yeah.
I absolutely agree, but it's just like we had, that ethical discussion not too long ago about, Columbo's antics in the first Robert Culp episode. And it's just like, I feel like this is falling within that same little box where I don't necessarily think it's the ethical choice for Columbo to just take the key to somebody's apartment.
Well, here's my thing. This is more ethically clear to me than our previous conversations on Columbo's ethics, because he is willfully giving the key to his house and telling Columbo, hey, please search. Do what you got to do. So Columbo doesn't have to worry about getting a search warrant or anything of the like, because he's given full permission from Kingston.
Yeah, from the owner of the home. And Columbo also is doing due diligence. It doesn't feel like harassment. He's just trying to establish alibis.
Exactly.
And the end of that scene, we see Kingston's face, and he is very much worried.
Yes.
Which is something that Martin does very well throughout this episode, is that he is able to put up the mask of, calm, cool, collected art critic Dale Kingston, but there are moments where the panic is clearly communicated on his face, which I really enjoyed from the performance.
Oh, yeah. Great performance overall. So, John, from here, we go with Dale Kingston meeting Tracy at some random side somewhere off the road in a random spot by a cliff.
Yeah, so somewhere in the LA Hill area.
Yeah. So Tracy essentially gives him the paintings and asking what the next step is, asking Dale Kingston if he actually cares for her, if he actually loves her, to which he says, of course, my darling, of course.
And they talk about the paintings that he stole, those two particular ones, to which she is very much jealous of, because she feels like her art skill is nowhere near what those pastels are.
Yeah, and he's just telling her, don't worry, my dear. It takes time. It takes training. You'll be fine. First time I saw you, I told you you had some sort of skill.
I'm glad you brought up it takes time to get what you really want.
Yep.
Because that was an interesting line and an interesting read by Ross Martin.
Yeah, it was, because he said that line, John, when he was putting the paintings inside of the bag inside of his trunk and staring at them ever so lovingly.
Yeah, so like at this point we know that he's doing it for these specific paintings, but we still don't have the full context as to why he did what he did. But it seems like he wants these either for sentimental reasons or for the insurance money. Again, that's just speculation.
Right.
And at this point, it all seems hunky-dory between the two of them. And then Dale Kingston grabs a rock.
And beats her over the head, John. Which,
Yep.
let me ask you, did you find this super abrupt?
It was, yeah, I can definitely agree with that. It comes out of left field. It's very quick. It's a very quick choice on Kingston's part just to kind of brain her and throw her down a cliff in her car, I guess. But
because the last thing was like he tells her he cares for her and then just picks up this rock, bashes her before she even makes a reaction, essentially.
I mean, this kind of goes back to prescription murder, though, in some way, because this is, I think, the quicker version of what we saw in prescription murder. Because there we knew that Dr. Fleming was going to kill his paramour.
Right.
The moment that she became a flaw in his getaway plan, you know?
The moment he stopped becoming useful.
Yeah. And I think here with Tracy, it is her usefulness to him evaporated, I think, fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Because all he needed from her was to get the paintings out and to get the paintings back to him. And when that was completed, he didn't need anything else.
Yep. So he kills her, throws her in her car, and pushes the car over the cliff to simulate an auto accident. Which
we don't see, but did you catch that very good transition, Anthony?
No. Please go on.
I noted that it's kind of like the Spielberg episode, but Murder by the Book with the silent scream. Here we don't see her scream, but we hear a screech of cars and tires. And that is a very nice transition and a very clever use of, not getting to have a physical scream, but, doing an implied scream. Because we don't see the pushing off the cliff and the actual rock to head moment. It's implied, and we get the explanation what happened later on. But I thought, that sequence and the transition worked really, really well, and were a highlight by our director here of Hi Averback.
Absolutely. And speaking of transitions, John, from here, the scene transitions to Kingston driving back home. It's late. It's a lot darker now. And he grabs the paintings in this giant, brown paper bag and walks into his apartment, turns on the light, and who's sitting inside his apartment, John?
Columbo, asleep, because Columbo did exactly what he said he was going to do. When he took Kingston's key, he took it, he opened the door to let himself in, and then put the key under the mat and read art books, and apparently was there reading art books so long he fell asleep.
Do you think he actually fell asleep, or is that something planned, John?
I had that question down for you, too. How long was he really there? Let's dive into that. How long was Columbo there? Was he there for 6 hours?
It's implied he was there for 6 or more hours, but I'd like to think he showed up maybe a few hours earlier, staged a scene he fell asleep just to catch him off his guard.
I'm inclined to think that, too, because part of me wants to say maybe he went there maybe an hour before.
Yeah.
Or he's just 10 minutes before and he just barely beat him. But, I mean, I don't know. We don't get – this is all speculation on our part. There's nothing in the episode that could support it either way.
So Columbo is super apologetic to Dale Kingston about it. He's saying, I'm so sorry. I just came in. You gave me the key. I wanted to read some books.
I was just looking at watercolors. And I fell asleep. Did I fall asleep? I can't believe it.
Yes. And he notices that Dale's got this abruptly large bag with him and goes to grab it, saying that, oh, watercolors. I love watercolors. Let me take a look.
Because Kingston, his fake excuse was that he got held up post a lecture reviewing somebody's art. And what was in that case is that individual's art. So because Columbo was, so looking at watercolors, He's like, well, maybe you could teach me some things. Let's look at these watercolors. So Columbo reaches in, but he's not able to pull out the stuff before Kingston can stop him. And then there's a phone call.
Yes, and this said phone call, it goes straight to Columbo, which again is one
Because
of my
I told him I was going to be there.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about the show, where he always tells the police officers that, or his headquarters, that where he's going to be. So he's always taking a phone call for somebody's personal house phone.
So we learn of a new case. A young woman has been found dead. Something caused her to drive into a canyon. She was killed. And we move to the next day where we meet Mrs. Edna Matthews. And we learn about Rudy Matthews' will. What were your first impressions of Edna, Anthony?
I felt as though Edna was kind of ditzy. I felt as though she was... Obviously, I felt Columbo just kind of negate her as a murder suspect right away. Just because she's the kind of person that doesn't seem like she could kill anybody for anything. She just seemed very lighthearted, kind of a free spirit, a little ditzy.
She barreled over him a lot in that walk and talk.
Yeah, she barely let him talk. She was just like motor mouth running and running and running and running.
Yeah, and we find out that Columbo has brought a piece of art with him. And has, right before the will reading, has a conversation with Mr. Kingston, to which his first response is terrible.
Yeah.
We learn that art is his girlfriend or accomplice. I'm not sure what to call her because it feels unfair to her to call her his girlfriend because I don't think that was any kind of...
Yeah, his romantic interest, his partner in crime, if you will, Tracy.
Yeah, so he describes it immediately as terrible. So that tells you what he really thought of her as an artist. So he was a horribly lying to her. And Columbo said that is trying to establish a connection between the two, which Kingston is trying to brush off because he sees so many people at his lectures. But Columbo mentions, no, she was at your lectures a couple times because you did them at her college a couple times. So you had to have possibly known her, which Columbo can't really establish at that moment. And to be honest, do you feel like they drop this pretty quick?
Yes, very quickly.
That's like the one thread that does not get picked up.
No, never does.
Episode.
They just drop it. And like I said, they never pick it back up. They just kind of go forward with other evidence that Columbo, that is, goes on to other evidence to convict Dale of this murder.
Which is unfortunate in my opinion. Yeah,
because unfortunately she just gets cast aside.
Yeah, and it's just like I don't appreciate that she doesn't get she does get justice, and I mean we could write in our own little fanfic that it's gonna come out, but I would have preferred it to have been done in the episode, not something you and I have to talk about here.
Yeah, exactly. We're having a fanfic because when, spoiler alert, Dale gets caught with his head, red-handedly, essentially, about the murder of his uncle. She is not brought up, and he's not accused of murdering Tracy at all.
Yeah, and that's horribly, horribly unfortunate, and I wish it was something that was...
Now, John, I want to put a pin as far as this unfortunate writing and or bad writing. I want to put a pin for another point that we're going to get to very shortly, actually.
Of course. Now, we go to the will reading post the conversation about Tracy. The housekeepers are there. Edna's there. Dale Kingston is there. Columbo has been asked there as well, so he gets to listen in. The housekeepers get $2,000 a month for as long as they're alive. Dale gets the rest of the estate. But more importantly, Edna, the ex-wife, who Rudy mistakenly divorced, according to the text of his will, Edna gets the art collection.
Yep. And everyone's expecting Dale, to go up in arms, say, "What is this? I can't believe it." But he is calm, cool, and collected about it.
Yeah, and this is a new will. This is not this is not an original will. This is a subsequent will that replaces whatever Rudy had before. We learned that 10 days before his death, Rudy changed the will.
Yep. Frank Simpson makes that of note. Frank Simpson, played by Don Ameche. He is the lawyer-esque figure of the estate, and is the one reading the will.
Yes. So the question now is, why give the art collection to Edna? Because the estate that Dale is going to inherit has no real value. Any business holdings are gone. The house is a rental, so there's essentially nothing that Dale is going to get. And Dale says as much. He says that it doesn't really care because he knew he knew when his uncle made the change. His uncle sent him a letter saying, "We're changing it. You're not getting anything outside of the estate."
Yeah. And he says, so that's why I couldn't have killed him, because I'm not going to get anything to gain off of it.
Yeah. So Columbo should stop pestering him and go do his job and find who really did it.
Exactly. Now, John, speaking of figuring out who really did it.
Yes, Anthony.
We're going to be coming up to Act 3 and the act of how Columbo catches one Mr. Dale Kingston. So, John, we are now on Act 3, and remember that pin we so nicely put on the writing, how it could be bad in this episode, that I wanted to uncork at a certain point?
Yes, you did.
Let's uncork it now, because this opening scene of Act 3, where we see Columbo going to the landlord of Tracy, trying to place Tracy with Mr. Kingston. Now, I feel like this entire scene is just a comedic throwaway scene.
Yeah, in part.
Nothing is gained by the end of this particular scene, John.
And arguably, you could cut it out and still kind of get the episode where it is,
Yeah, it was just a comedic scene added to where he's messing with a bird that the landlord owns, and the landlord is running over lines of dialogue, showing Columbo every single picture she's ever owned on the happenstance that she took a picture of Tracy with Mr. Kingston. And again, just kind of a toss away filler point in this episode.
Yeah, this is one of those things where, the nature of shows like this tend to be, at least now, police procedurals follow a specific format. They're an hour-long episode or, 44 minutes without commercials. And the fat is trimmed. This feels like, fat to be trimmed. And I think if you kept this episode in the oven a little bit longer, you would have lost these types of scenes. And maybe it would have been something that would actually bring back to, the second murder of this episode that gets dropped. But
well, that kind of just makes me think, John, like maybe, and I'm just thinking of it right now as we speak, maybe there was a point where they were going to, but it was too long of an episode, so they had to cut out.
I possibly. I mean, we can't find anything otherwise, and unfortunately, every creative person, for the most part, about these episodes are dead. Yeah. So we can't really ask them directly about what they chose to do and chose not to do. But we move back to the grounds of Rudy Matthews' house, and a policeman asking the groundskeeper, do you got any tips for bugs, aphids, or something like that?
Yeah,
right?
Something like that.
After which we discover a gun in the yard, and we then learn that Edna lives actually pretty close to her ex-husband. I find a little bit surprising, but okay.
Essentially, for those loyal listeners at home that are trying to picture this, think of it like when you have a giant plot of land and there's your main house, and then there's what's called an in-law home or a guest house or something of that nature. Is essentially what Edna is living in on this property.
She lives downhill from that property that her ex-husband rented. She even says as much. It's like, sometimes I just go up to walk that hill to catch a bit of fresh air. But that comes later when Kingston shows up. We come to her having a discussion with Columbo, and he's asking how she rekindled her relationship with her ex-husband. They just ran into each other, and they came across each other later on, and things in their lives had changed. They had changed as people, and it felt like they were meeting each other again for the first time, as it were.
Exactly.
Like she describes how her ex-husband started collecting art, and it was because of her.
Yep, she got him into it. She was interested in art. He saw a business opportunity to invest in. He jumped on it, and it got to the point where he made lots of money on it, but he wanted to give all the payings away because he was tired of the game, John.
When she met him again later in life, he had come to the point where it's just like, it's not worth it. The upkeep, the stress of it all. We'll donate it.
And I like the line she uses. He wanted to get to the point where everybody can see this art.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very sweet line.
It's clearly a sign of a man who had some money, but had come to the decision that the money wasn't making him happy and the possessions weren't making him happy. So maybe it's better to do something for everybody rather than just myself.
And which is why he left the paintings in his will to her instead of to his nephew Dale, because Dale would not have done that.
No, Dale would not have done that. And we also learned that when Dale started getting involved in the selections of the painting, because at first it was Edna helping Rudy make selections. When Dale came in, she started getting involved. She was getting pushed out, and that led to her drinking, and that led to marital problems.
Yep.
So, in all things, it comes back to Dale Kingston being a prick.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, Columbo learns, or how does it work? How does he find out about the gun? Does he just get told we found a gun and then he lets Edna and Kingston know?
Yeah, so the way, again, we're having to assume a lot of this.
Yeah.
He invites Dale to the home, but he already knows about the gun found. So it's assumed that the police officer who discovered it in the garden, they let him know since he's the investigator on the scene. Yeah. But we don't have a moment where we see the police officer or the gardener tell Columbo. We find it out through exposition that Columbo talks to Dale and Edna about.
And we learn that it is actually Rudy's gun that was discovered. So the presumed situation was that a burglar broke in, Rudy came upon them, tried to shoot them, but they were there was a struggle, and Rudy was shot with his own gun.
And we find out that that is the murder weapon that was found because Columbo has this really cute scene where he uses the phone, asks to use the phone, he dials a number, and he goes, "Who is this? I asked for the forensics on this gun 30 minutes ago." And starts to kind of tear into this in like a grandfatherly upset way.
Yeah.
But then he's like, "Oh, okay, thank you." Like hangs up the phone. And then that's when he gives us the exposition that, yep, that was the gun that killed Rudy.
Now, Dale is pretending to be flabbergasted and is believing that Columbo thinks Edna has something to do with it, considering how close the gun was found to her home.
Yep. So he starts to throw in this vain attempt of, oh, it can't be Edna, even though her house is so close and the gun was found on her property. And then they walk outside because that's when the police officers step in and say, "Hey, we found something, Lieutenant." Then they all step outside and see the wrappings from the portraits of the house, and which, again, more faint attempt of him saying, "No, it just can't be Edna, even though we found these papers and this gun here.
It can't be her." And she had left, to go shopping because she is just so kind of spaced out and emotionally fragile that they can't really have this conversation around her.
And to which then Columbo's like, "Oh, no, I don't think it's her at all. Like, I have no need to search the house. Don't think it's her." And then Dale really starts suggesting that Columbo search the house entirely, in which Columbo pushes back and says, "No, I don't need to."
Yeah, why waste the time? Why put in the effort for somebody who clearly had no ability or want to do this?
Which is a key note because the very next scene we get, John, is Dale going back to Frank Simpson's office, the lawyer, and
Don
Ameche himself, going there and talking to him about, hey, we need to make sure that the police search this house because we want to clear Edna entirely and lower her anxiety about it because she is not guilty. And then Frank Simpson starts to buy into this. And then, unfortunately, he goes, "Okay, well, we're going to have to bypass Columbo because Columbo doesn't want to search."
Exactly. And Frank Simpson says, "I got some people on the force that I can talk to. I'll give them a call."
And he says it's all for her sake. And, Frank goes, "Well, she does have quite a motive. Do you think she could have done it?" And he stares at Frank and goes, "How dare you, Frank?"
The sheer uprighterism of that, of Dale Kingston in this moment is just so blah.
Yeah, exactly. Just makes you barf. So Dale leaves Frank's office as Frank's making the phone calls to the police chief
and to Edna to get her over there because she's still out shopping. He tells the secretary, have her paged, and then have her come here. So she shows up at the attorney's office, and we see Dale in some very lousy Steve McQueen style glasses,
Aviator
sunglasses.
glasses.
Yeah, he looks like a bloated beetle.
Exactly, as if that's going to hide the fact that he's still wearing a very loud suit.
Oh God, with the loudest shirt and tie you could imagine.
Yes. So as we mentioned, he has this crappy disguise on. He puts the paintings in her car, I believe.
Yep.
And then from there, they all drive back to Edna's place. They go inside. Dale starts making them a drink to kind of calm the nerves, and he quote unquote spills a drink on his shirt.
Yeah.
Which uses the time to take the opportunity to switch your shopping articles with the paintings.
Yeah, well, he hides them in this box and then moves them into a linen closet where they're just as part of the setup as it was. The police arrive.
Captain
Weiler, who we just get Captain as far as I'm concerned. And I love when Columbo drives up, and I love how wide the shot is. I love the music.
And he's flying, too. He's pushing that little car to go its max to this house, John.
With good reason, because Columbo shows up and starts talking to Kingston. It's like, what's going on here? I didn't order this. I got bypassed by this. Do you know what this is?
He's almost being apologetic about it. He's saying, hey, I'm sorry. This was over my head, and it came down from the top of the brass saying we had to search it, so I'm very sorry.
Which Kingston is very smug about, either way. He's just like, I got you. You're not here. Ha, 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 ha.
And then that's when Columbo finds out from Edna that Dale and Frank insisted on having Edna's house searched.
That's right.
And Columbo goes, interesting. And then as soon as he finds that out, the cops find the paintings from the linen closet.
And then Dale just goes, how could you?
Edna, how could you? Don't say another word, Edna. And Columbo asks for the paintings to be fingerprint searched. While he's doing that, Dale is asking the question, like, why are you doing this, Columbo? Why does this have to be? And Columbo's ignoring him until he gets so smug. He's like, look, I need an answer, Columbo.
I wouldn't say it's smug. It rang to me of somebody who was losing control of the narrative.
Oh, that's a way better way to put it. Yeah, way.
Because up to this point, as aggressive as Kingston has been with Columbo to get Columbo off of the trail, because he treats him very poorly compared to how Columbo gets treated by subsequent suspects as we go on and as we've gone through already. He always had some kind of control, and the control was pointing at Edna. So everything at this point was making it more and more likely that Edna was the murderer. And the fingerprinting isn't supposed to happen in Kingston's narrative. Yeah. It's supposed to be they're in her possession. Well, obviously she did it. Yeah. But it matches the flaws that he has when it comes to creating his narrative.
Exactly.
And you catch that in some of Columbo's explanations. A professional would not have picked the lock on a patio door. They would never have bypassed the alarm in enough time that way. They would have gone through a window, which a schmuck like Kingston wouldn't know. He would just assume his way is the right way and just go with that.
And so Columbo finally gives him the answer of, we're searching for fingerprints, to which Dale indicates that he's searching for Dale's fingerprints on it, to which he's frantically is pretty much screaming. He's like, well, of course, I'm the one who unwrapped it. Remember, I told you that. This is entrapment. And Columbo's like, no, I'm searching for my own fingerprints.
Because I touched them.
Because remember that night I fell asleep and you came home with those packages, I touched those portraits. And so if my fingerprints are on it, it shows that they were in your possession and not Edna's, because I never saw Edna with these paintings.
Now, and we haven't discussed why Dale is trying to frame his ex-aunt. Legally, if you kill the person that you're inheriting from, you are not going to inherit according to their will. And in this case, Dale knew that the will had been changed. He was not going to get the art collection. Edna was going to get the art collection. But if it was shown that Edna had killed her ex-husband, she would not get her inheritance. It would go to Dale. Dale would get the estate and the art collection.
Exactly.
Which I will say, Anthony, I hope you might agree with me on this. I still don't know what her motive would have been.
Yeah, The only thing I could think of as far as a quote-unquote motive would just be like inheritance money, like the money.
Like getting it sooner?
Yeah, I guess getting it sooner. But one part, John, about this, we figure out that Columbo's searching for his own fingerprints, and we find out that Dale is looking at the captain, saying like, well, why is he even here? He shouldn't be here. And the captain goes, no, this is Columbo's case, so he's going to be here, which shows that even the higher-ups got Columbo's back.
Yeah, and this is something that was said, I don't know if it was in the Ransom for a Dead Man or for Prescription Murder. Columbo said, when somebody's trying to get me off the case, that tells my superiors I'm on to something.
Exactly.
So in this case, what Dale did by going behind the scenes and going to superiors, in this case showed, okay, yeah, no, Columbo's on to something.
Now, John, when we figure out that Columbo's destined for his own fingerprints on that's when Dale is really set over the edge and is just like, well, this is entrapment. You must have touched it right now. You must have touched it as soon as they're dusting for it, and which we have the best reveal ever.
Best reveal, because Columbo's hands had been in his pockets the whole time. The moment he got onto the property, the moment he got into that house, his hands never left his pockets, and he pulls out his hands, and they have gloves on them.
And he gives his own, like, little smug look, like his own personal F you, buddy, I got you in this moment. And that's how the scene ends, which is a beautiful way to end this episode, John.
Yeah, I agree. And it's also, like, personally, one of the strongest moments of Ross Martin's performance, because I really appreciated and really thought he sold that breakdown of a man increasingly getting constricted in his own trap.
Now, John, speaking of Ross Martin and thoughts about Ross Martin, I have my own thoughts on Ross Martin, which I'll unveil
in our segment about our final thoughts titled Just One More Thing. And just one more thing. So, Anthony, just one more thing. What are your final thoughts on this week's episode?
My final thoughts, John, again, you teased it so eloquently. Ross Martin plays one of the best bad guys, one of the best villains I have ever seen thus far doing our rewatch of Columbo. He is excellent. At one point, I saw his arrogance, I saw his snootiness, I saw the way he looks on the screen and thought to myself, he could have been a James Bond villain.
You know what? Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's got that stature. He's got the snooty confidence that comes with a Bond villain. He is honestly one of the strongest suspects. I'm trying to think of it. I couldn't think of the name we were going to give this guy. So I just went through all of that garbage in my head. But it's a great performance by him. You really do get that snootiness of a stuck-up art critic, or somebody who's just so trained in a certain thing but didn't have the personal skills to really be humble about it. And part of that might have just been because, he grew up in a very overly cultured realm. Because, we don't get much of his background, but we know that his uncle helped him through school. So there is a closeness between him and his uncle that unfortunately wasn't enough to not consider killing his uncle. But I think he sells the bitterness very well. I think, it's like he's a man who is clearly frustrated that he has to deal with the lowly up and coming art crowd that he finds himself superior over.
And again, that's just a testament to Ross Martin and how well he did in this episode. And John, for my second point and my final thoughts, I just wanted to, again, we touched upon it just a bare few minutes ago about the reveal that Columbo was wearing gloves in that end scene. That is just fantastic writing, fantastic directing, and fantastic acting on the part of Ross Martin, as well as Peter Falk. That smug look he gives with his hands held high and the gloves on.
This is honestly one of the better performances from Peter Falk, and this is coming off of the mess that we had to deal with in Deadweight, where it seemed like Falk was disinterested because of various behind the scenes reasons, and the rest of the cast was just as disinterested. But here, I think we're back to firing on all cylinders here again. I do think it's unfortunate that the murder of Tracy O'Connor did get dropped the way it did. I honestly thought that, in my recollection, that Columbo was a lot tighter in how it dealt with solving its mysteries. So it's a real shame that this one had, dropped that and then had such a pointless scene with, the conversation with the landlady. You can arguably cut that out and the episode is still just as effective. I do appreciate
Kim Hunter
in that she sold, Ditzy very well. Very much a confused, but I don't think she's dumb. I just think she's ignorant of the unfortunate side of humanity, which is, the cruelty of it.
Yeah.
I don't think she's a cruel woman. I think she's just an overly attached person, because it seems like she really appreciated the connection she had with her husband through the art. And then that got taken away from her and she wasn't able to process it well.
Yeah, to me, she just always felt like this character of like a free spirit, right?
Yes.
Kind of like a hippie grown up and grown into this world and just so happened to meet a guy that had money and set her up for life, essentially.
Yeah, and then she just got in her own way, in part due to, the change in relationship between her and her husband as a result of her, her nephew. But coming around as a person to really find some kind of peace with what had happened and finding a way to move forward with that individual too. I really appreciated that. I felt like it was a little bit, even though the character's not in the episode as much as others, I do feel like there is some nuance to her there.
Absolutely, John. And my final point, you already mentioned, thank God we had this nice palate cleanser of an episode after our last episode.
Yeah, I agree. I will say that I'm hoping the directing gets a little bit more sharper. I feel like there's still a lot of shoe leather.
Sure.
Which maybe I'm just giving Spielberg a lot more credit just because it's Spielberg, but I'm missing that tightness, I suppose. And it's just like here and there, it's just like, this could have been a lot better in places, but it's still a vast improvement than the malarkey we had to deal with last week.
Absolutely. Now, John, speaking of things that aren't malarkey, is the way you always end our show, as only you can.
That is right, Anthony. It is that time, good listeners. You have been listening to another episode or file in the Columbo Files. I have been one of your co-hosts, John Suarez, and he has been the man, the myth, the legend, the booty, Antonicus Gluteus Maximus IV, Anthony to his friends. And on behalf of both of us and the Ludic Lounge, I'd like to say to you all, thanks for listening. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, this is Peter Falk, and you've been listening to an episode of the Columbo Files, hosted by the Ludic Lounge. And just one more thing. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Ludic Lounge, Anthony at RojoLoco44, and John at just_John_0891. Or feel free to email us at theludiclounge@gmail.com.